Good evening. I'll bring this special meeting for the first budget hearing to order. We'd all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Councilmember Evino.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hill.
Here.
Vice Mayor Kitchen. Here. Councilmember Dodd.
Here.
Councilmember Iovino.
Here.
Councilmember McPartlin.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time I'll go to item 4A and ask the city attorney to advise the city council on the procedures for millage. Mr. Stokes.
The procedures for adopting the tentative millage. Oh, you're
Sorry
fine.
about that. I'm behind in my computer stuff here. Oh, here we go. Okay, in accordance with Florida Statute 200-.0657A1, the City Council is required to tentatively adopt a millage rate for calendar year 2018. All right, that's a fiscal year.
Yes,
Right?
that's correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
calendar year 2018, and budget year beginning October 1 of 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019, at the first public hearing in which the budget is presented. Staff is recommending the tentative millage be set at the rollback rate of 3.1514. This and other general fund revenue sources will be sufficient to, 1, provide for wage adjustments and a net increase in number of positions, 2, maintain current spending levels for operational expenditures, and 3, provide funding for certain equipment that could not be funded from other special revenues.
All right. Thank you. Could you read the resolutions R1828 and R1829, please?
Yes, R1828 is a resolution of the City of Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida, adopting a tentative millage of 3.1514 mills for the calendar year 2018, providing for conflict, providing for Scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date. And Resolution R18-29, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018, and ending September 30th, 2019, making appropriations for the payment of operating expenses, capital expenses, and for the principal and interest payments on indebtedness of the city in the city's general fund, special revenue funds, debt service funds, capital improvement funds, golf course fund, airport fund, and building department fund, as provided for in Schedule A, attached hereto, establishing authority of the city manager to implement the budget, providing for conflict, providing for Scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date.
All right. Thank you very much, Council. And for the public, we're going to handle items E and F under one public hearing with separate motions and votes. So any questions of staff will be relative to both R1828 and R1829, and any input from the public will be the same. Mr. Carlisle?
Mr. Mayor, the city attorney already mentioned in his presentation that staff is recommending a balanced budget at a rollback rate of 3.1514. Mr. Kilgore has a brief PowerPoint presentation to go over the tentative budget for your review. You will notice that the only significant change to the budget since our last budget workshop was the removal of an airport director and the addition of the leisure services director, which all of the parks and recreation will fall under that one individual. So there's some budget modifications to that and towards a positive nature towards reducing the cost of the city. Mr. Kilgore.
Thank you. It's been covered before, but we are going with a rollback rate of 3.1514. All the outstanding issues have been resolved, as you know, about the insurance and the labor agreements. Little commercial pitch here that considering the hurricane reimbursements are still lagging. It's been over a year now since Irma. It's been 2 years since Matthew. I check the websites like every other day to see if there's any progress in moving those along, and it's very disappointing. All I can do is just keep after them from time to time with reminders that we're still here, still waiting for our money, so. As always, our goal is to go with a rollback rate whenever possible. Mr. Carlisle already mentioned the combination of the Parks Division and the shifting of all that maintenance and operation responsibilities to the Leisure Services Director. We were able to do that by cutting out the airport director, and instead of having a director there, having some chargebacks to general fund for that role. Even with those changes, the overall change in the budget compared to last year's budget is still a reduction of $166,000. We are still adding a net number of new full-time positions of 10, and we are offsetting that somewhat by one net amount of part-time temporary positions. Golf course, we're projecting the $30,000 revenue from the restaurant. We are paying back the general fund towards the $700,000 loan that was made for those improvements. If you look way out there in future years, there is a reduction of deficit based on assumptions of growth and changes in operating costs. The airport is repaying $40,000 now to the general fund. This was part of how we could afford the Leisure Services Director. We had a $25,000 payment previously, so we bumped that up to $40,000. The only remaining portion of this debt to general fund from the airport is now, after this year's payment, about $15,000. So we've gone from a $200,000 loan over the last four or 5 years to get that paid down. So all they will have to worry about following that is the amortization of the loan that was made from discretionary sales taxes for the airport hangars. Their reserves look like they're getting in a very positive zone now, and looks like they will be okay in future years. Of course, the building department looks good in reserves. They are adding a full-time building inspector and a part-time clerical assistant position. We're really forecasting no change in their revenue level. As you know, we've broken out the stormwater utility fund, or at least consolidated everything within that fund as far as operating expenses and capital improvements. We've added one position to that operation, and next year we've got $500,000 towards drainage improvements scheduled using stormwater revenues. I'm not going to go in detail with all the other funds of the city, but that's what makes our governmental accounting different than private enterprises. We don't have just one enterprise. We've got a number of different funds that are restricted for various purposes. Local option gas tax, we've got over $500,000 going to road work next year. The big project in discretionary sales tax will be the Public Works compound, the first phase of that. We're continuing the CRA sewer connection program, continuing to fund that effort. And one thing I trust you picked up as far as our methods of coming up with the revenues to balance out the general fund budget, we're using $55,000 of the cemetery trust fund monies. Cemetery trust fund, as we get those receipts, they divide it in half. Half of it is restricted, can only be used for future capital expansion. The other half can be used for operations. So we haven't been transferring more than just the interest on that operating portion, but now I think we'll be very fine at transferring this amount of revenue probably annually now. So it'd be a continuing source of funding the general fund, which then has to bear the expenses of maintaining the cemetery. Not going to go into a lot of details on the capital. I provided this summary to you last month. As far as most of the money is scheduled to be spent towards stormwater issues. Of course, we've got the public works compound that'll be a big amount over the next 6 years. Continuing investment in roads and equipment, of course, the police department, and the enterprise fund expenditures are primarily in the airport, as we have scheduled another hangar and some other construction funds that are supported by grant funds. So we get most of or a big part of our monies to fund the capital program from grants and, of course, the discretionary sales tax. We would be severely hampered if we didn't have the DST monies to help support our capital needs. Just wanted to put in a plug about the homestead exemption referendum coming up in November and how that will basically shift the tax burden to rental and commercial properties. I'm sorry, it will shift. Yes, well, I guess I said it right to begin with, but it would
You were correct.
be a small benefit to actual homestead properties because you have to be over the $100,000 Save Our Homes value. We have put a link on the website to the Florida League of Cities comments and information that they've made about the referendum. So we will meet again September 26th for the final budget, final millage, the adoption of the CRA budget and the capital program, as well as a regular council meeting. And we had previously had a presentation on the employee health, dental, and vision insurance programs, but we didn't actually do a formal vote. So I'll probably have that on, or we will have that on the consent agenda. Be glad to take any questions or comments.
All right, great. Great job on the budget. Staff was fantastic. I would suggest that the entire process, working with the Budget Review Committee, and just the way you guys worked really well with the Budget Review Committee and presented this very, very easy to read budget. I'd say that of all of the budgets I've gone over the last 14, 15 years, this one's pretty clean and transparent, and it's easy to read, and it's very well done. So I have no questions about it. Any questions I've had have already been asked of staff, and I'm very comfortable with this. Any comments from city council members?
I've just got one, and I just happened to notice this. On page 94, the CRA's sewer connection program, it looks to me like the money for that is in the wrong line. There's the facade and sign improvement program that has $40,000 in it, and the sewer connection has $0. I'm not sure that's not backwards. It's just a mechanical thing if that's the case. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure
Yeah,
that
just,
gets
I mean,
addressed.
that's the only, I in particular like the breakout for the, I have a hard time calling it a leisure department because that brings up visions, you know, but the city's Department of Leisure, and then the stormwater. It really aligns accountability between budget accountability and work accountability within a given department and within a given management staff. I think it's a very positive step to make that move. So I'm in particularly really happy that that's being done. So, and the budget is great. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything further from council? Anyone from the public wish to speak on items E or F, Resolution R1828 or Resolution R1829? Hearing none. Council, what's your pleasure on Resolution R1828?
Move approval.
Second.
A motion, a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Kitchen.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd.
Yes.
Councilmember Iovino.
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin.
Yes.
Mayor Hill.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. What's your pleasure on R 1829?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of resolution number R-18-29.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Dodd.
Yes.
Councilmember Iovino.
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin.
Yes.
Mayor Hill.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kitchen.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll close the public hearing, and at this time, I will announce that there will be a final public hearing on the millage and budget, which will be held Wednesday, September 26, 2018, at the regular city council meeting at 6 p.m. That leads us to item 5, new business, 5A, resolution number R-18-30. Mr. Stokes.
A resolution of the City of Sebastian, Florida, adopting amended financial policies governing various areas of budget and finance as provided for in Attachment A, providing for conflicts, providing for Scrivener's error, and providing for an effective date.
All right, thank you very much. There were just a couple of changes that were made. Mr. Carlo?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of council, in discussing objectives, future objectives with both council members and the budget committee, there were some concerns or some questions about how we're going to manage our unfunded mandates. So I asked Mr. Kilgore to work on that, and you'll see the biggest area of change is we've kind of a first look at how we fund those retirement funds, those unfunded leave that show up in our CAFR and our financial reports. And we've kind of outlined percentages. And again, it's our first look at it, so it may change over the next year as we get some more information. But it shows more accountability on how these reserve funds are done. We always talk about, and Mr. Kilgore's great, always talks about the hurricanes and the different natural or man-made disasters. Councilmember Dodd at one of those meetings had mentioned, but that's not our only liability. And he asked at that meeting that we look at those, and so we did. And I think that he did a good job as a first blush of trying to show the public that our liabilities aren't just storm-related. So if there's any other questions regarding that, I will be happy to allow Mr. Kilgore myself to address those.
All right, great. Does council, do you have any questions of staff at this time?
I have none.
Yeah.
So, you have none?
None.
I've got a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah. Page 23 of 25. Item number F at the top of the page. I think, I remember last year when I asked the question, what's the minimum that you're willing to accept? It kind of started this, but I have an issue not with saying that the $3.5 million is a minimum, but my issue is the mechanics around all of this, and I would like to remove item F from this policy until we can see more mechanics. I mean, I could see that we have one storm, we pay it out, we're at $3.2 million. Now, what do we do if it's in the middle of a budget year? Do we throw surplus money or do we raise taxes to make up 25% of the difference between the two? I can see a lot of issues with that. I would not be willing to say that we're going to increase taxes to make up 25% of the difference without there being a lot more going into it than just that. And that's kind of what this says we would do. So my preference is that we just pull item F out of there.
We can do that, I can see how that would be read in that way. And
I think we pulled this last year too from the same thing.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Dodd. Could you tell me what page that was again?
Oh, it's on page 23 of 25.
Okay, thank you.
And it's at the top of the page,
Yeah, I got it.
item F on that. So
you're asking
I do believe we pulled this last year from the policy as well.
All right.
Yeah.
So, and that is correct, we did. So you're talking about on page 23 of 25, item F of A. You want to just pull
Correct.
that and have that removed?
I'd like to pull that, yeah.
Section 8, paragraph, subsection 8,
Okay, it would be
paragraph A.
subsection 8, paragraph A, item F.
Correct.
Nailed it.
Okay, now, on the next page, I understand the concept, this unfunded liabilities, that we've got things like early retirement and employee leave and so forth. I don't have any issue with leaving that in, as long as we change the next section, which is the use of surplus sections, and that we basically insert in number 9, item A, that fund balance targets at the discretion of city council may be used for the following purposes. And then the very first one of those should be addition to the general revenue reserves. And then after that would be these, because the first thing we should do is increase general revenue reserves if they've fallen below our target. Second thing we should do with that is the police pension fund and then so forth. So.
Okay, I understand what
I
you're.
don't have any issue with that. I just don't want us to once again get caught up in a situation. I know this wasn't under your watch, but the R&R fund just brings back memories that at one time the council said put surplus in there, and then all of a sudden we found out that there was a lot of money in there that we didn't know was in there because surpluses had automatically been rolled into there. And I would like to see, before we decide to put more money in any of these issues, except the general fund, I would kind of like to see some statistics and breakdown as to why we're going to do it on a particular basis. So I'd like the council to be the ones to make that decision and not make it some automatic action that's going to take place.
And I can appreciate that. Again, we were trying to satisfy some of the requests from the budget committee and from the council to try to not mandate that these numbers be, but allocate some number to them to show that it wasn't that. So and I agree, we're not trying to mandate these numbers.
Right.
I think your language will make that happen.
Okay. I think it's a great idea to consider how we're going to pay for employee leave accruals and how we're going to pay for some of this stuff if it happens, because it's got to come out of our reserves. So we know we're going to pay for it out of the $5 million reserve account, and it's nice to know that there's money there above the $5 million and the categories it makes up. And then we can kind of deal with that as we find surpluses, decide where to use the surpluses as we do that. So it is a good idea to do that. And then there's one other, we're actually dropping, and this is on page 25, we're actually dropping from last year. We had 15% reserves in these several of these funds, and we're dropping that to 5%. Do you think there might be, well, my first question is, at the 15% level to the 5 level, are there surpluses in those accounts because we had reserves greater than 5%? And if there are, have those surpluses been accounted for as expenses in the budget? And then if there's not, is the 5% sufficient? I know you wouldn't say it if you didn't feel it was, but I know we went from 15 to 5, so.
Yes, sir. The 15% has been a long-standing budgeting technique that we would say the reserves or the revenues that year wouldn't be spent if, to leave a 15% cushion. I've thought for quite a while now that was kind of excessive, and it really means you're holding back revenues collected this year instead of appropriating them this year. You're saying, oh no, we're going to use those revenues down the road.
Okay.
So I thought, well, bring it back down to 5% if we should have a drop-off in that year's revenue collections versus what was budgeted, or if some additional expenditure came up that we came to the council with and wanted to fund that year, even though it hadn't previously been projected. It gives us a little bit of flexibility, but it doesn't set so much aside that we're holding back on getting things done quicker.
And the capital outlay reserve item on 7F, where you've got local gas tax 5% and so forth, that's actually the same 5% you're referencing over here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. With those two changes, I can move approval. If you need me to spell out the changes, I'll try to do it.
No, I think, Mr. Carlisle, you have those changes and you fully understand what we're looking for. And council, do you understand the changes that Mr. Dodd are looking for?
Second.
All right. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? Any further discussion from council? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Iovino.
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin.
Yes.
Mayor Hill.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kitchen.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, great. Anything further from staff?
I appreciate being able to provide this to you all, and hopefully we'll be able to do more in the future. And as I learn your systems, we'll be able to look at these. So I appreciate it.
Great job. Great job. Ms. Kitchen, you had an
Yeah.
announcement you wanted to make?
I do have an announcement. As you're all aware, this past Saturday was the first annual First Responders Cook-Off. And I'd just like to say that the Sebastian Police Department won second place overall by the judges and first place for the audience choice. And their ribs placed first by the judges. And they would like to offer a special thank you to the Sebastian Police Explorers, the COPE unit, and the city manager for helping set up and serve, and Jeff and Stephanie Chandler and the family of outriggers, Mark and Valerie Weiner and Woody Woodrum for their excellent barbecuing skills, and our city clerk, Jeanette Williams, who volunteered as a server. And they appreciate everybody attending and making this event such a special success.
Awesome, great job, great job. Anything further from council? Hearing none, we are adjourned.